Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Good afternoon. I've been waiting to say that all day. Welcome to Artist in the Afternoon for Writing for Our Lives. I'm Derek Tennille, the founder and CEO of Rethink the Narrative Edutainment Company, where our mission is to educate, empower, and entertain communities of color and beyond. We are so excited that you have taken the opportunity out of your day to come and be a part of this wonderful event. We have some internationally renowned authors, poets, filmmakers that are going to speak to us today about their various works. This event is sponsored by Rethink the Narrative Edutainment and the Esteem Awards in conjunction with the Center for Human and Civil Rights LGBTQ+ Institute, eBand Man, and our media sponsors, Meek Productions, Blackout, and Black Table Talk, and directed by Taufi of Here's Life Productions and produced by Pure Luxury Films. So, y'all ready for a few questions? I promise you. So let me introduce my panel here, all right? We have sci-fi author Andre Bradley, 2021 Lambda Literary Award winner and romance novelist Anne Shade, writer and co-founder of Black Creators in Kidlit, Alan Writes Well, poet extraordinaire Latanya Mack, writer and founder of Mind Over Matter Healing, Atlanta historian Doris Thomas, and author W.D. Foster Graham. Let's give our panelists a hand. So my first question is for Andre Bradley.
Ooh, all right.
You are a sci-fi author, and in the last decade or so, we have seen more Black sci-fi authors emerge on the scene, particularly Black queer sci-fi authors in the same and in the tradition of Octavia Butler. My question to you is, tell us about your debut novel, which is Trailer Park Prince.
Yes, the Trailer Park Prince. So first of all, I'm so happy to be here. I don't know who follows me on Instagram, but I took everything except the boat to get here. And seeing how humid it is in Atlanta, I might be paddling out of here. I don't know how y'all do it. And so, yeah, I started writing Trailer Park Prince a long time ago. I was working a job in Afghanistan where we were in a war zone. We were having, rockets lobbed at us. It was intense. It was hot. And I wanted something to kind of help me escape. And so I started writing this book that had this fun and free narrative about people with powers who can escape. And then I came back to Washington, D.C. I put the book down for a really long time. And through the time that passed, Trayvon Martin happened. There was a lot of social injustice and legal injustice that took place. And I wanted to use my platform to kind of tell a story about that injustice in some sense. And so back in 2020, I picked up my old manuscript, dusted it off, and took this thing that was supposed to be fun and free and made it a lot more serious. And so now we have Trailer Park Prince, a story about a group of humanoid aliens who comes crashing down on the American South. And it tells the story of how they choose to use their superhuman powers to get basic social human rights. And it's, to some extent, it's allegorical to the American Civil Rights Movement as these brothers kind of grapple with a violent approach versus a non-violent approach. So you see their analogs with Black American history. all wrapped up in a narrative about family and love and found family and finding one's place in a difficult world.
Wow. So what drew you to sci-fi?
So the thing about I when I look at my life, again, I say Trailer Park Prince. I grew up in a trailer. I wanted to kind of show that, no matter where you're from, you can grow up to be anything, right? So I put these people in this trailer, so check. I know they're going to be in a trailer. But part of being part of life, or when maybe I read or watched that Carrie book/movie too young, but anytime that I see like a kid going through high school and they get bullied, I'm like, I hope they get telekinesis and and that they set all this on fire. And so and so I always want to create characters that have some form of power to kind of tell the story about like what does actual power mean and what does it mean to rein it in when you need to. And so I never meant to come out of the gate with the sci-fi story. I wanted to come out of a gate with a story about people who seem powerless but actually have a lot of power, and how society kind of puts a damp spirit on that power, much like, the black community, the gay community. We are powerful people, but then within the systems that we have to operate in, it doesn't seem like we are. And so in that kind of taking that and giving them these superhuman abilities, we have this contemporary sci-fi where folks are, living in South Georgia, like lifting things with their minds and creating portals and doing what they can to survive.
So the whole premise or the whole message is for us to discover the superhero within us, huh?
Exactly. Did you read my book? Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. I look forward to reading some more from you.
Oh yeah, I'm writing some things now. I have a middle grade fiction that I'm currently seeking agent representation for. I have a son with special needs. And I noticed that there are not a lot of books with main characters with disabilities. And so the second book that I hope to get out of the gate tells the story of a boy set in this fantasy world where everyone has wings and can fly. In comes this unexpected hero whose wings are kind of broken and he can't channel magic. But we learn that everything doesn't need to be fixed to be considered whole. Wow. As he discovers his power. So.
Oh, that's
yeah.
the message right there. Everything doesn't need to be fixed to be whole. Dude, you preaching right there. Anybody got a collection plate they want to pass around? Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
Now, our next panelist here is Ann Shade. Now, are you shady? Not at all, because your name.
Well, my name basically comes from the shades of the rainbow, which is, of course, our flag. Because I'm on the spectrum, as I say. I wanted to give myself something that represented our community.
Explain what it means to be on the spectrum.
So I'm the B in LGBTQ, and I'm proudly saying that, and I want people to, I guess, respect me as much as they respect everyone else on that rainbow. So Shade is dedicated to our community and all of us.
I absolutely love it. Wow. So now, you don't like to throw shade, so we've established that.
No.
But you have retold some classic fairy tales.
Yes.
In a book entitled
Femtales.
Femtales.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
For the longest time, all that many of us had were fairy tales. Whether it was Cinderella, whether it was Snow White, whether it was The Princess and the Frog. You're retelling something. Tell us about that.
So Femtales was my first book, and I love fairy tales, but I also love seeing them turned on their head, and I wanted them to feature, in all my books, feature people of color, women of color. So I wanted these stories to be contemporary, feature women of color, be sexy, and be exciting. So I chose Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, and Cinderella as my premise stories. The first story, Beauty and the Beast, is titled Beast, and it's about a rap artist named Ebony who is grown up in a very tough time. She grew up in, I don't know if many of you know Chicago, she grew up in Cabrini Green's projects. She, there you go, there you go. I'm originally from Chicago, so I picked up that story. So she grew up in Cabrini Green. Her mother was a drug addict and abandoned them. She had to raise her sister on her own, had to do things that really just took away a lot of her emotion. And her only care was her sister and then her elderly neighbor who took them in as well. And so she became a beast in the independent rap game. And she did it without cursing. She did it without using the N-word, but she managed to make an impression. She was a beast. But she's also very just, arrogant. Just, she's not a very emotional person. And then she encounters Belinda, who is a nurse who has come to take care of the elderly woman that she's kind of adopted into her family. And they kind of clash at first, but then Beauty meets Beast, and the story unfolds. The second story is Awaken, which is based on Sleeping Beauty. And there's a chef, Chase, who owns a restaurant in Harlem, soul food chef. And there's a customer that comes in that she's been kind of flirting with off and on. They haven't really maintained anything, but then she's decided she's finally going to ask her out. She comes in every Sunday. Then one Sunday she doesn't show up. And come to find out that the customer had been robbed in Central Park during a morning jog and knocked out, and she's in a coma. So she feels compelled to go visit with her. She talks to her, because they say when people are in comas, they can still hear. So she talks to her, and during the whole most of the story, she is in the coma, but she hears everything that Chase is saying, and it kind of helps awaken her in many ways. Then the final story is called Stiletto, based on Cinderella, and one character is a shoe designer, and the other character is actually, and they're all, so Ebony, Chase, and the third character are all best friends. So the stories connect. Okay. I meant to say that. So the last character is actually Ebony's boss and the one that discovered her when she was coming up, because Ebony's now a producer. So they forced her to go on vacation because she doesn't take vacations. She's a workaholic. So Ebony tricks her into going on vacation. And while on vacation, she meets the shoe designer, Faith, and they hit it off immediately. And then come to find out there's a connection that they didn't expect. So I won't tell because you have to buy the book. So, but there is a happy ending for all. There is a ball at the end where they all connect. So
I think this is absolutely amazing.
thank you.
You have taken the traditional classic fairy tale that we grew up with, and you have made it inclusive, for one, so that we can see ourselves,
Yes.
that women can see themselves in these fairy tales. And you modernize them.
Yes, it's very important for me, and it's why I write. So everything I write, including my current one, as you see, I try and put us on the cover. My publisher kind of pushed back on it for a little bit, but not enough, because I made sure that I want them to know these books are about us, for us. They're for queer women of color, whether they're bisexual, whether they're lesbian, non-binary, whether they're butch, stud, femme, however you identify. I'm trying to reach all these people through all my books, these characters through all my books. And I want women of color, queer women of color, to know that they can have a happily ever after. They can fall in love. It doesn't have to be all tragic, because when I was coming up reading queer femme, and I'm sure a lot of the other ladies, I'm 57, so I'm sure a lot of the other ladies my age and up understand, there were some tragic stories that were written. Everybody was either going to prison, somebody was killed, there was a violent relationship. There were not any soft, wonderful, loving, sexy, sensual romances. And so that's why I write what I write.
So it's so, again, representation in
Yes.
all forms
Yes.
matter.
Yes.
And again, we didn't have positive stories
Yes.
about our plight as queer people of color
Yes.
when we were growing up.
Yes.
But now, look at us now.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so very
Thank
much
you.
for your literary contributions. So now we have sitting next to Anne, ally Latanya Mack, and she is an inspirational poet. Now, I was always told that when you retire, and I hadn't got there yet, but when you retire from something to something. Tell us, Miss Latanya, what you retired to.
I retired to living. Living. I didn't retire to just sit. I wanted to be able to express myself and some of my experiences in life. So just because you retire, you have something to look forward to and something to do as long as you want to do it. Just don't be with somebody else's ideas for you. Live what you desire to do and be happy in it.
So Miss Latanya started writing after she retired after how many years?
I was 70 at my first writing.
So first book published at 70.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Give that a hand. First book at 70, and how many have you written?
7.
7. Now, every other week, she tells me that that's her last book. I don't believe her. Tell us what your latest book of poetry is about.
It's about evolving. We know where we've been, and we realize that we're not quite finished, but we're in steps to where we're going to wind up. And so we, especially in our minds, sometimes we focus a lot on our bodies, but our minds are still evolving as well. So that's where I got the idea of evolving. And so the last book, number 7, is called Evolving. And I'm still
evolving. Okay, so you brought something that you want to share with the audience today.
Yeah,
Just a little something, something.
just a little something.
All right. Go for it.
It's called Winners. And we're all winners. And all of my poems are inspired by a scripture. And this scripture is Isaiah 45:7. And it says, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. The poem, Winners, says, losers win by leaping onto the back of others. Losers ride the foundation that winners build. Winners stay awake. You can't stop them from hating on you, but don't let them get into your head. Every time they tell you what they think, tell them what your God said. You are the apple of my eye. I love you the way you are. Now love yourself with confidence, and every wound become a scar. You are a winner because I say so. I gave that vision to you. I placed the adversary in your path and strength to make it through. I see everything you're doing. I know everything they say. Let every scar speak for itself. Tell them, I'm not hearing you today. If your greatest feat is hating on me and your life purpose is fulfilled, I thank God for you, my brother, and I have erased all ill will.
Wow. Winners.
It's called
Wow.
Winners. Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for that. All right, so next we have healing. Now, after a spiritual awakening, you took on the pen name of Healing. and you recognized that something was not quite right in our approach to health and wellness in this country, which became the mantra for MOM. Tell us about mind over matter. And I'm also very curious about the spelling, the way that you spelled it.
Okay.
So,
So, like you said, you know, I used to work in the healthcare field, and actually one of the my managers is in the audience today, Mr. Patrick Kelly. Um, you know, in working in the healthcare field, I recognized that there was a disparaging gap that exists in healthcare in this country. That you know, the country focuses on the symptom as opposed to looking at healing the cause. And so, you know, that became, you know, the mantra for Mind Over Matter, and got together with my father and some other people to start the company. Originally, it started as I was doing personal training and offering health and wellness products. And then it morphed into a book that I published. So the first book that I published was um, Mind Over Matter, The Awakening. And so basically, and it's kind of in line with a lot of things that Latanya mentioned, that we are three-part beings. We're mind, we're body, we're spirit. And in order to truly heal someone, you have to approach each part of who we are. And so that's what the goal of Mind Over Matter is.
I was taught that everything that you are from the neck up. If the head is not right, guess what?
There you go.
The body won't be right either.
Yep.
So if you get the head right, the body and everything else will fall
There
in
you go.
line. Awesome. So what else are you working on? Any new projects?
So, Journey to Consciousness is my second book. It just came out last summer, and it's basically kind of a continuation of the first book. So the first book is a collection of poems and affirmations all around approaching life from a consciousness perspective, and also approaching it from what I mentioned earlier, from a mental, spiritual, and a physical standpoint. And so this takes that work, and then I've added some additional affirmations and poems, and also I've added some affirmative prayer in here. So it's Journey to Consciousness, and it is available, and I will be selling it in the room over, in the next room over. Yep.
Awesome.
And I'm also working on a third book that'll probably be a few years out.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so very much. Wow. Next, we have Miss Doris Thomas. Now, Miss Thomas here, Miss Doris, I like to call her the Atlanta historian, because she's got some stories about this place before 1996. And way before then, even going back to the civil rights movement. She is Atlanta born, Atlanta bred, and we are so honored to have her here with us. So, Ms. Doris, first of all, I want you to tell us about the book that you are a part of, and then we're going to delve a little bit into this Atlanta history just a little bit.
Okay, the book is The Eyes of the Beholder, and it's written by Golden Writers. And we started out, we named it our memoir, but then when the publisher read it, he said it was an anthology. And so it's 12 women, 12 black women telling our stories. And I said, we need to write a story about how 12 black women got together, stayed together, and wrote stories. So we met in a senior citizen center, and we started writing stories. We were asked to write stories. And just before COVID, they decided they wanted to publish us. And I said to the program director, I said, have you read the stories yet? And she said, no, you're all going to be all right. Like, you old women, what can you say? But at the very end, she read the stories and said, we can't publish it.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you something about our stories. And so COVID hit and they closed the center down. And I really didn't want us to stop writing, so I said, why don't we meet in the park behind the center? And I think they must have closed the center down in maybe May, and we met every week until it got too cold for us to sit in the park to write. And then we started, we weren't familiar with Zoom. We tried Zoom one time. Then we went to a conference call, and just before everything was closed down, we were to meet and take pictures, group pictures, but they closed the studio down. So we sent in individual pictures to him, and he said we didn't send him what he wanted. And we said, well, we don't know what you want. You just have to use what you got. Okay. And what you see on the back is what we sent. And I think they're very good stories. They stories about what women our ages have gone through. Like I said, we were at that time 55 to, I think I was about 78, 70 something then, I think. I'm 82 now. And it was, so we really, we did, I mean, we went through, we paid for the printing of the book ourselves so that we could talk it through on the phone after we closed down. My stories, I talk about poison moonshine in Atlanta and how many people died from it and how long it took for the police to get involved, how many people had to die. And I talk about my mother, someone tried to hide moonshine under her house, under our house, but my mother was from the country. She had a double-barrel shotgun. She had a nickel-plated automatic, and she had a .22 pistol. So that tells you something about my mama. So you don't hide, the purpose of hiding it under somebody else's house so they would get locked up. And so you have to read the rest, buy the book to hear the rest of the story. So I like I said, I wrote about growing up in Atlanta, segregation, and I'll tell you a little bit about the story that I told. What's your name? Patrick. We moved from a house on Decatur Street that had bathroom, lights, and running water to buy a house in Summerhill that only had running water. So that was a big change. But one of the difference was we had a community. The people next door had electricity. So we ran, my mom, they ran an extension cord from their middle room to our middle room. We had outhouses at that time, no indoor bathroom. My stepfather enclosed half of the back porch to build a bathroom. So the people next door didn't have to go outside and use the outhouse anymore. They came and used our bathroom. So there was, what was that, bargaining? What did they call that then? Bargaining? And a barter.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just a little bit about what I write about.
Wow. And so back in the 1980s, Ms. Doris, you were on the front line of helping to combat the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Atlanta.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, you worked for Aid Atlanta for a period of time.
Yes, and if you ever get my story back, I'll print it.
Uh-oh. I'm detecting a little shade. But you didn't throw that one. But it came right past you, hit me. All I'm gonna say is yes, ma'am. Okay, so so tell us a little bit about what that experience was like for you being a black heterosexual woman in the 1980s on the front line of the HIV/AIDS epidemic.
Well, I was the first person of color to work for AIDS Atlanta. So I went in. Can I tell you a little bit about how I got that job? I will. But anyway, I was in an automobile accident. I was driving a Common Gear. Anybody know what a Common Gear is? Mm-hmm. You do? Yes. Okay, so you had to be old to know what a Common Gear is. I was driving a Common Gear, and I didn't have seatbelts. Really was just coming out then, and mine had gotten stuck. And I went to, I thought I went to sleep, but it was something else. I went into the windshield, cracked the windshield, so my face was really messed up. And so I was at University of Jordan School of Social Work at that time. A classmate was the social director at AIDS Atlanta. She asked me to come help her, and I did. So I went to work looking like Frankenstein's wife. and I must say that though the clients there were so wonderful to me. They were so happy. But they told me when my face started to heal and the swelling started to go down, they said, I'm so happy to see your face and see what you look like. Because I know I look bad. But anyway, it was really, when I first started, it was pretty much white clientele. We didn't really have any black. They started to come in, which was a different because black clientele tend to be intravenous users, drug users. Thank you. Intravenous drug users. But the clients we had different. We had people coming in from New York because they had, their income was higher in New York. So they could move to Atlanta and really live well, their lifestyle.
Sound familiar?
So they could move to Atlanta and have a really nice lifestyle. It was mostly educating and finding resources. At that time, we had, I can't remember what apartment on Moreland Avenue, triplex, fourplex, and we housed some of our clients who were homeless. And some were homeless because their family disowned them and put them out, so they didn't have a place to stay, so we would put them up, and I would go by to check on them. And I think, I can remember one client that I had, and at that time, people were afraid to touch people, afraid to get close to people. They were afraid of all this. I never had that fear. So I went by, and he had gotten so weak that he had soiled his clothes. And so I got him and up to the bathtub and got him washed up, and I was going, and I look back, I didn't have the fear of catching anything. So, and I didn't catch anything, but I didn't have that fear of catching. So I had a real, my working with patients at that time was a good feel then, and it's good feel. I got a story that someone is reviewing for me.
I'm detecting shade again, y'all. Is there any clips of the sun going on?
Of a young man who came home. He was a sergeant, maybe a little bit higher than sergeant. He came home. He was diagnosed with AIDS, full-blown AIDS, and he came home for his parents to take care of it. Now, you're talking about a fine young man. I mean, when I say fine, what they say, razor sharp. He was gay. He left, he joined the service because he didn't want anybody to know. And so he traveled. He lived in Paris, and when I say he lived in Paris, he came back Paris. I mean, he had beret to the side, and the suits were, and the coats was crossed. What type of coat was it? Anyway, coat thrown across the shoulder, and when he walked in, every eye turned to look at him because he was fine. I want to say he was fine.
Was he fine?
But when he got home, both his parents were ill, and they were looking for him to take care of them, and that really just, you know how you can be, and something just take the wind out of the sails, and some people die, not because it's time for them to die, it's because they decide they don't want to live anymore. And this is what happened with him. He didn't want anybody to know that he had AIDS. Wow. And so but he looked fine all the way to the end, I'm telling y'all. Looked good. He lived in
I see where your memory is.
Yeah, right, he was fine.
I want you to, he lived in a penthouse. So I don't know, he saved up his money, I guess being in the Army. Smooth, I won't say, his complexion was about yours, like yours. And I'd go to see him, and he would have his silk pajamas on and his silk house coat. I go, I don't need to come see you. You need to be coming to see me.
Now, Miss Doris, now hold on now.
I mean, I'm probably more sicker than you. But anyway.
I want to just simply call the attention to the level of detail that how old are you, 21?
Yeah.
That at 21, that she's able to give to these stories. And one of the things that, we, of course, people are dying that ain't never died before. And we're losing these stories. And so if you have a story to tell, I encourage you, write it down, tell somebody, voice memo, record it, because we need these stories. Because what's happening is there's what I call generational nihilism, where there is a gap between the generations because we're not transmitting the values that we once upon a time did. So thank you, Ms. Doris, for sharing.
Thank you.
And so last on panel one is W.D. Foster Graham, an independent, self-published author of 7 books in the Christopher Family Novel series, which are now part of a library collection and the Archie Given Senior Collection of African American Literature, one of the largest collections of its kind in the U.S. Now, tell us briefly about you and your story. What inspired you to write?
Okay. For this series, I think I've been writing ever since I was old enough to hold a pencil. I know how many of you out there write that far back. Can remember. In any case, my inspiration for this series comes from the fact that, yes, I'm a baby boomer. I'm also was a teenager when the Stonewall riots took place. So, yes, 72 big ones here. And when I was looking at books, when it came to African American men, I saw this. The ones I'm reading, the black men were either down and out, broke, busted, and disgusted, uneducated, on drugs, unemployed, in jail, or dead. And I knew that that was not the whole truth because I was looking at examples that my father, my uncles, that they said, no, that's not true. That is not true. And there was nothing written about those men who were had that level of success. It was always on the opposite and this stuff. So they weren't getting attention. They weren't getting the energy. So the main character for my series, whose name is Alan Beckley Christopher, and he is a composite of my father, my uncles, and men of his generation in history. You know, John H. Johnson, H.E. Gaston, H.G. Parks, these highly successful African-American businessmen. So, and on top of that, I was, again, it was all about looking for the characters. All right, where is somebody who looks like me? So since Alan Beckley Christopher in my novels is the linchpin character, he is a self-made billionaire at this point, and the family is large, extended, wealthy, and powerful. And it's a family that I would say set standards instead of following them. Also about this, because I was looking at, okay, what about somebody that looks like me? This family has a very significant number of LGBT family members in it. And that's how the Christopher Family novel series started. And this is the 7th installment, To Thine Own Self.
Wow. So you are another one that you've been writing since you were able to put paper to pen. But also, you started, I would say, in the 2nd season of Life Publishing. Tell us a little bit about your love story as well as to how you became an author as well.
Yeah. Well, and then I guess you're talking about my love. This is a romance novel. Because this is the 2nd romance novel I have written. Because, yes, I love reading them. That's my favorite. I love to know how the characters meet. How they know the attraction, the steam, and the obstacles they had to overcome. And as always, there is a happily ever after. And now then these stories, there's still a great need for these LGBT romance novels in that genre. Because I think it was mentioned earlier. I think, Anne, you mentioned it and stuff. And it's important, again, representation matters, because if we don't share these stories, who will?
Now, I'm going to go back, and because what I was prompting you to do was share your personal story, because in the words of the prophetess Taraji Henson, it's hard out here for a pimp. So tell us about your love story.
Well, as I said earlier, yes, I was a baby boomer, a teenager during the Stonewall riots.
Your marriage.
Writing was my passion, and that's going towards things that happen later in life. And I think what Derek is talking about is, my husband and I have been married for now 14 years. And we have a son. He is 24. Interestingly enough, yes, I adopted my son straight out of the hospital. So yes, raising a little boy from scratch. But again, how my husband and I met came out of something my son stated as an 8-year-old. Daddy, I'm going to find you a husband. And actually, he did, because Edward and I, my husband and I actually met in church. And he saw my
have
son
mercy.
before I actually saw him. So after we met, 2 months later, I proposed to him on his birthday.
Wait a minute. Now, you left that part out of the story last night.
Yes, right. Well,
So this was a whirlwind romance.
not well. I kind of honestly from the best because my father proposed to my mother 2 months after we met her back in 1951.
Generational carry on.
Generational carry on. And 9 months later, we were married. So we've been together ever since.
And so here's the thing, do you mind me? Well, you've already shared how young you are. So that meant that if you all have been married 14 years,
That's right.
that meant that you were in your early 50s,
Well, late 50s.
late 50s. Oh, my bad. My math ain't mathing today, y'all. I'm sorry. Your late 50s.
Right.
So there is hope. Oh, there is hope. For those of us out here who are still out here in these Atlanta streets. Thank you so very much for sharing your story. So let's give him a hand. Now I'm gonna come back down here to my friend here, Andre. Our theme for this year is writing for our lives. We're at a point in history, an apex in history, where there is a concerted effort to erase Black history, queer history, women's history. Anything relative to history that has to do with a marginalized group, there is a concerted effort. What can you do, and what are you doing to make sure that the erasure never happens?
So, I mean, I have to look at it from the standpoint of my life, my day job to some extent, and then my career as a writer. So, just in general, proud Black man, father of a Black son, making sure that he always knows, that he can achieve anything. As a U.S. diplomat, I try to work to make sure that the United States Foreign Service looks as representative as the United States. And so I go out and I speak about, the opportunities in the federal government to get out there, to make sure that your voice is heard, and to kind of help the world. As a diplomat, you go to foreign countries, you help the world see who we are, so that we have more allies and advocates, not just within our borders, but across the world, to say, hey, what's going on in America, that these things are happening. And then as a writer, looking at the fact that books can be banned and these strange things can happen, is a matter of like telling stories in a way where you can get everyone to feel for the plight of what's happening. Quick backstory with Trailer Park Prince. When I initially wrote the story, I never gave the protagonist a race, because I wanted everyone to read them and have whatever image they want in their mind about who these people are, because I wanted them to see good people going through bad things. And whatever color they ascribe to these people, in my mind, I know what they look like. But I wanted other people to have that opportunity to make that, so that I can tell a story about social injustice and people getting their comeuppance, and then have conversations about, that was the civil rights movement. That was the LGBT movement. That these are marginalized people in this way. In every book that I've written since, and that hopefully will see shelves, I try to take a story of something that is being erased or is being banned, and say, how can I make a character live this story and not make it that thing, so that we keep the conversations alive about what does it mean to go through oppression. The story that I'm writing now, the working title is For Witches by Witches, about an America that's divided between pro-witch states and anti-witch states, and we have this protagonist who's stuck in this, in Indiana. In Indiana, she's a closeted witch. Her parents are very, very conservative, And then when her witch powers are, erupt in this very public way, she has to use this underground railroad to get to a place where witches can be safe. I mean, and it crosses, racial boundaries, sexuality boundaries, but it's telling this story that anybody can identify with, but it keeps, the conversations about what does it mean alive.
I like the notion of the embedded story, because that's what I keep hearing. The embedded story. But a lot of times it's the subconscious that it affects.
Yeah.
When there's an embedded story and we don't even know we've been touched by it, but you kind of snuck it in on us.
Oh, yeah.
I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. And what would you say about to youth coming of age in this time of uncertainty?
I don't write young adult, but I do try and recommend queer young adult authors when I can to queer young adults. I will now, believe me. But I also, sorry. I also try and also do that with my stories as well. I wrote a historical called Masquerade that took place during the Harlem Renaissance. And I incorporated quite a bit of that in there, of course, because it took place during Harlem Renaissance. I'm currently working on a historical novel that takes place, what a lot of people don't know, the Underground Railroad didn't just go north, it also went south into Mexico and into South America. So I'm writing working on a novel right now during that period, and the main character is, she lives in one of the towns that is currently still has descendants of the Underground Railroad that went that way, Coahuila, Mexico. Working on that. So I try, and then this character here, one of the characters in this book, her aunt is actually one of the main characters in Masquerade, her great aunt. So I try and slide in, as you do, a little bit when I can. But this is for the adults, because the adults can tend to forget as much as the children. But I try to make sure that I also read queer queer authors of color young adult books, so that I can recommend them to my nieces, my nephews, other children that may, want to learn and may need to know a little more about themselves and their culture.
Awesome. Miss Latanya, what can we do to help youth coming of age in this time of uncertainty?
Help you.
Yes.
Well, as a great-great-grandmother, as a great-great-grandmother, I'm in contact with a lot of youth, and I always tell them to stay in purpose, with purpose, and for purpose. Just don't let anger be your guide. Know that there is a purpose and a promise. As long as you don't get angry, you can see how to fix things when they go wrong. You're not the only one that this has happened to. That stuff happens, but don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. How can I make this better? And so, you have to say, I'm sorry sometime. Then you have to say, I forgive you sometime. But it's always a way to move forward, because stuff happens, and when it happens, you may not be prepared, but you got people that can help you, to fix situations. And the good is the good, and the bad is the bad, and the indifferent is the indifference. Just stay in your purpose, and be happy as much as you can.
Awesome. Healing, how can we bring healing to this world?
Well, one thing that I always say to people in my circle and people I have conversations with is that life is choice. And we all have a choice. And even for those of us that don't know or don't think that we have a choice, we do. And so it's really about reminding us that we have a choice, that we can create the lives that we choose. And it's about knowing what that life looks like, believing that it exists, and going forward and making it happen. Because it truly, you can create the life that you choose to live. And so just letting everyone know that you can make that choice, and it's a conscious choice. Every moment is a conscious choice. And then again, approaching it not only from a mental standpoint, from a spiritual and a physical standpoint. You know, we have to approach the whole person in order to affect real change.
I have the power to recreate the reality I want to see.
Yes, indeed.
And if I don't like what I created, guess what I can do?
Yeah.
I can recreate it.
'Cause as long as you
I'm
breathe
just
it,
that
you can
powerful.
choose again.
Absolutely. Amazing, amazing. Ms. Doris, what would you say to youth coming of age today? What advice would you give them as they move forward in this thing called life?
Know your purpose. And it's not enough. They can only know their purpose when we speak into them. Let them know what we see. I think for me, I didn't know my purpose nor my potential. It was because people spoke into me. And so it's very important for us to not always tell someone what the bad we see them, but some people, I know a young lady, someone was always telling them what they should, that they had a purpose. But I said, has anyone ever told you what they see in you, your potential? Oh, they told, not the purpose, they told her she had potential. So I said to her one Sunday, has anyone ever told you the potential that they see in you? And she said, no, ma'am. So I started to tell her the potential that I saw in her. And I want to let you know that last year, this young lady came up to me and said, Ms. Doris, thank you. I'm graduating. I'm getting, she decided to do child development.
Wow. Amazing. So
And
your words.
I just want to say one other. When I was growing up, my hero, someone asked me a few years ago who my hero was. And it was at a workshop, and I said Geronimo. And so he looked at me and said, okay, we're going to let that pass. But when I was growing up, we didn't have any heroes, and Geronimo was the only one I related to. And I really related to Geronimo. You have to read the story to find out.
Was he fine?
There's more shade coming this way. Somebody help me
I
understand.
haven't given you Geronimo. So Geronimo was a Native American, you remember.
Yes.
So I haven't given that. But that
Okay.
I really loved. He was my hero.
Was he fine?
Well, he was okay.
He was okay. Thank you so very much. What would you say to the youth?
To the youth?
Yes.
Well, if you're going to say something to the youth, the first thing you have to do is meet them where they're at.
Yes.
So now if you're seeing, you're looking at when you're able to meet a need they have, the youth are more likely to listen to you and and the wisdom you have to say. And there's one African proverb that sticks with me, and I shared it last night, that until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So you let them know, hey, do not be afraid to tell your story, because if you don't tell it, who will? And also encouraging the youth to believe in dreams and never give up, because you're never too young or too old to follow and achieve your dreams. Of course, because one thing I always think of when it comes to mind, soul, and body, that what we think and what we feel is what's going to show up in our lives.
Yes.
Or or another way you say it, what we give is what we receive. So it's up to us to be very mindful of what we're giving to our young people and to connect with them. Because they say, we as the elders, it's our responsibility to carry that forward to our young people. Because, the thing about kids, they're when you don't think they're listening, they're listening.
Absolutely.
And watching. They're watching everything we say and everything we do. So we think about the examples that we are to them, and also about being conscious about making sure that we pass the stories like Latanya and Doris and all them, that we are passing those stories on. And either it's by recording or written down or that sort of thing. So they in turn can pay it forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. So very quickly, thank you. Give him a hand. How can we follow you? Would you all give us your social media, how to contact you? And that's going to be our last question.
Sure. You can find me. I'm pretty active on Instagram nowadays at Billy's Goat Gruff. Or right outside, I have a QR code for my website, AndreaBradley.com.
Awesome.
I am on Twitter, and Shade 3, because I guess there was two other and Shades. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and Threads is at And Shade Romance, and my website is andshaderomance.com.
I'm at lcmac42 at yahoo.com, and I'm not on Twitter or any of that, but I do have a code. What do you call that?
code.
I have a QR code, and it's upstairs. Anyone can get it if you come upstairs.
I'm actually reachable via my website at www.momonline.com. That's MOMONLINE.us, not .com.us. So it's momonline.us. I'm also on Facebook, Mind Over Matter, and my Twitter is momhnw, H&W, and I think same for Instagram.
I am going to follow suit with Miss Mack. My granddaughter is sitting out laughing at me because she's been trying to get me to do a web, all business cards and everything. I have not done either one. But you can reach me at DORISTHOMAS62@hotmail.com, and none of you are writing this down, so see me at the top.
Okay. Well, for yours truly, for social media, I am on Facebook, WD Foster Graham. I am on Twitter at WD Foster Graham 1, and my website is wfostergrahamauthor.com, and say contact email wfostergraham@wfostergrahamauthor.com, and yes, I will be up there as well, so I'll be seeing everybody upstairs.
Awesome. Let's give them a hand. Wow. Andre Bradley, Ann Shade, Latanya Mack, Healing, Doris Thomas, and W.D. Foster Graham. Thank you all so much.
Da 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 da